Hey guys, Triforce of Doom here, and it has been way too long since I made a countdown. Sorry about that. I blame college and the fear of learning a new editing software. As for today's topic, well, it's been at least 4 years since I made my first solo project on the channel, Top 10 Soundtracks. And 4 years is a long time in the gaming world, meaning that list is very outdated. So I say, it's time for a reprise of sorts. Same general rules as last time, just with a bit more definition. No rhythm games, no licensed soundtracks a la GTA, no crossover fighters like Smash or Cross Tag since that's cheating, and only one rep per franchise. That last one is because otherwise this list would be almost half Persona since I'm an obsessed bastard, and variety is the spice of life. Other than that, it's my favorite OSTs. Need I say more? You were expecting Undertale to be on here somewhere, but it was me, Deltarune! When I was going over candidates for the list, I knew I had to put Toby's work somewhere in there. And in the end, I chose the first chapter of his current project. Trust me, it hurts not being able to talk about the Undertale tracks, but I personally enjoy this OST more even if it's smaller. With tracks like the simultaneously motivating and somber Field of Hopes and Dreams, the intense guitar that is Versus Susie, the quirky Lancer, and the absolutely crazy World Revolving, it's not hard to see why. Toby took what worked with Undertale and added a fair bit of complexity while still keeping that Toby charm. And he's still a master of leitmotifs, what with how a fair deal of plot-important tracks sneak in the melody of Don't Forget somewhere in there. And to think, this is only the first entry in the list. While my favorites have changed a lot over the years, everyone has those games whose music sticks with them no matter what. With that said, time for the first of 2 returning challengers, and he's black and white and red all over. The Arena of Deathwatch brings the sound of rap and hip-hop to my ears, and I welcome it every time. Not only does it fit the game's aesthetic really well, but each song is also about either Jack or the poor sap he's about to brutally murder in that level, adding some extra insight into their motivations. You've got songs like You Don't Know Me, saying how Jack is underestimating the female bosses from their perspective, or Ain't That Funny, basically being how one of Jack's motivations for his job is that it's just how he gets his kicks. Hell, Look Pimpin' is basically the final boss's diss track towards Jack that plays during the first phase. All with catchy beats that I never tire of. The fact this soundtrack is so good really doesn't surprise me in hindsight considering Platinum Games made it, and well, this isn't the only rep of theirs on the list. If you'll follow me, this next entry takes place in Room 21. As I've mentioned in some of my other videos, one genre I grew up with was techno. So, go figure I'd love a soundtrack like this. Having tracks by a variety of artists, Lethal League has had a kick-ass resume since its first run, but the sequel adds some new tracks that knock some of the older ones out of the water. You got Klaus Veen with tracks like Ordinary Days Version 2 and Snippet Blaze for some battle tracks that are both chill and intense at the same time. No, I don't know how he pulls it off either. There's Big Nick's Scream, which I ended up always bopping my head to every single time and always gets me ready to kick ass. And of course, Ain't Nothing Like a Funky Beat, which you're hearing right now by motherfucking Hideki Naganuma of Jet Set Radio fame. My jaw dropped when I found out he was in the soundtrack. You know how we have those times in our lives where we need to reassess ourselves? Well, apparently some do it by climbing a magic mountain. Celeste is easily one of my favorite indie games. It's a really hard platformer that, due to theming, never makes you feel bad about yourself, and the soundtrack definitely helps with that. Normally, more ambient-style soundtracks don't stick with me outside of the game itself, but Celeste has one of those soundtracks you can just listen to while curled up in a blanket with a pet on your lap for hours. Have yet to actually do that, but it's one of those images I get when listening to some of the pieces. And it also does a good job of being foreboding without being pushy during stages like in, say, the Mirror Temple. Overall, a great soundtrack that you can just relax to, and sometimes, that's all you need. As for number 6, what if I told you Love is Blue? I've made it no secret how much I love Platinum Games' insanity, and Bayonetta is a prime example of that. You play as a witch who kills angels by using 4 guns at once while summoning demons with her hair after all. Of course, that kind of setting needs an appropriate soundtrack, and while both games deliver on the mix of classical and female versions of classic jazz songs, I personally like the sequel's selection a bit more. Tomorrow Is Mine is a kick-ass battle theme and main theme, the cover of Moon River is absolutely gorgeous, and the various level themes fit the ambiance really damn well. Now if Grace and Glory could stop kicking my ass, that'd be great! Do you like Dragon Ball? Do you like kick-ass rock music that captures the feel of Dragon Ball perfectly? Great, because Arc System Works has just the thing for you. Fighting game soundtracks are always a little interesting to try to talk about because unless you have a lot of composers like in a crossover, the soundtrack overall just has really consistent quality with 1 or 2 songs you can pick out as favorites. And while that can apply to fighters, ArcSys has always been pretty good about making each song sound different enough with the occasional genre break. In this case, each character theme fits them perfectly, like Goku Black's guitar track sounding like an off-putting hero theme showing his fucked up morals, to Yamcha's chiller track, and Hit getting a straight up jazz track that is ambrosia to the ears. For the record, my favorite is Broly's because it goes hard! The stage themes are also great, but tend to mesh more for me outside of West City since that one's beginning gives me Dust to the Elysian Tale vibes, and any reminder of one of my favorite indie games is a good one. Also, if you have the DLC, you can hear some of the anime OST, so that's a nice bonus! So, this one took me a while to choose which installment. So 2 genres I've made no secret of loving in a soundtrack are orchestra and rock. Well, guess what Xenoblade excels at? On one hand, you've got the somber and calming pieces like the title screen or various town themes. On the other, various battle themes that spike your adrenaline with adventurous songs for when you travel the wilderness between. And while it feels like you end up hearing One Who Gets in Our Way a lot for the first half of the game, it fits each time and so do all the other tracks. My personal favorite track being Mechanical Rhythm, which you are currently hearing. And of course, I can't help but mention You All Know Our Names. You've probably heard of it if you heard anything about the game, but you might not have known that what is arguably the song most associated with the game is the song just for fighting the unique enemies, aka the ones that can be upward of 60 levels higher than the area average. So if you've played the game enough, that kick-ass track will make you nearly shit yourself in fear when it plays out of nowhere, as it rightfully should. Seriously though, go listen to a playlist of the OST. It's gorgeous. So, remember how I said Mad World was one of 2 reps coming back for round 2? Hit it, Professor K! For those of you who watched either my original list or the Top 10 Nostalgic Games list, you probably saw this one coming. For those of you who didn't watch either list, what if I told you Jet Set Radio helped shape my music taste back in elementary school? So needless to say that this music selection has stuck to my brain like Gorilla Glue. With both high-intensity techno and chill punk like Funky Dealer, Aisle 10, Birthday Cake, and the oh-so-classic Concept of Love, Hideki Nakanuma and his fellow composers that Sega picked make for an amazing selection that never gets old. And thanks to the BGM coming from an in-universe radio station, any song can show up anywhere instead of being tied to specific levels, so you constantly have variety. And there's a reason I brought up Naganuma specifically. He is easily one of my favorite composers, and also responsible for Sonic Rush, another rep from the previous list, that sadly didn't make it. Seriously, go check his stuff out when you get the chance. And, Sega, please give us a sequel and or remake. I need it! Raise of hands, who expected Persona to be on the list? Yeah, that sounds about right. As for the rep, let's just say the competition wiped out. Yep, Golden has been dethroned in the soundtrack department. And not by the sequel, but the prequel. I love all of the Persona soundtracks, so it really just came down to which genre I preferred. And overall, I love the sound of rap and hip-hop for these battles the most. Especially when you have Lotus Juice on vocals. The dude is really good at what he does in the various battle themes. And the non-battle themes also kick ass, with the OP Burn My Dread, the head-bopping When the Moon Reaches for the Stars for traversing Tatsumi Port Island, the insanely tense Deep Breath during the first real boss sequence. I could keep going, but that's only one half of the soundtrack. For when Persona 3 got a female protagonist in the PSP port, she came with her own tunes that are just as catchy. From the new OP Soul Phrase, being both eerie and blood-pumping, to Wiping All Out's more slow take on a kick-ass battle theme, to Time being a school theme that I can't help but smile when I hear it, alongside the equally bouncy Way of Life for traversing the island itself. It's basically two equally good soundtracks in one, and I love it just as much as I'm happy the female protag is back in Q2. Now to just buy my own copy of that game. So those of you who either check my Twitter or chat with me on a regular basis may have seen this one coming. But for those of you that didn't, it's time to take this underground. As of writing this script, I've owned this game for less than a month, and it has beaten my favorite franchise in tunes. How do you do that? Well, the answer is easier to pinpoint than you'd think. Just have every single track be the catchiest son of a bitch it can be, and give each one at least one or two remixes, then set the playlist to shuffle for the whole game outside of scripted bits like boss battles. Oh, and that affinity for rap and hip-hop I mentioned in the last segment, yeah, turn that setting up to 11 here while also adding in some good rock and roll for a few tracks. Just off the top of my head, you've got the theme song Twister, the first map theme Calling, the toe-tapping Game Over, one of the best battle themes I've ever heard with Transformation, the absurdly catchy 3 minutes clapping, Hybrid being a great first battle theme, and the Determination giving Someday. And again, every song has at least one remix to go with the Switch port. Whether it's the remix that was made special for said port, or taking one of the past remixes from one of the albums, or, oh, I don't know, the Kingdom Hearts remixes. The final remix version's soundtrack compiles what feels like every single iteration of the soundtrack into one package that you slowly unlock, and they all fit the game perfectly. There have been many cases where I just waited on a battle result menu because I wanted to listen to the particular song for longer than the battle time would normally allow. It's that good. And while I already got my pipe dream smash character with Joker from Persona 5, Neku is my new one because not only is he a great character with ideas one could easily turn into a moveset, but I also want to beat the shit out of Nintendo characters to this soundtrack so badly. Anyway, I think I've gushed about this soundtrack long enough. What are some of your favorites? Let me know in the comments. With all that said, this has been the Triforce of Doom. Peace out.
How do you feel? Be in control. Don't you wanna break free? How would you feel if there were no rules? What would you do? Tell